Today's show is sponsored by CBT Nuggets. We know that Cloudcast listeners are curious about technologies, but how are you really learning to master the technologies needed to be a cloud expert? When I got my first industry certification, a Cisco CCIE, I literally spent every weekend for 6 months setting up environments and trying to teach myself all these complex technologies. Nowadays, CBT Nuggets gets rid of all that hassle. Everything's on the web, from self-paced learning with an instructor to virtual labs that are up and running in minutes. So whether you're looking for an infrastructure, cloud, security, or app dev certification, CBT Nuggets has you covered. Check it out at cbtnuggets.com/cloudcast to sign up for a free learner account. This unlocks tons of great training, and you'll be entered into a drawing for a free 6-month premium subscription. That's cbtnuggets.com/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back to the Cloudcast. We are coming to you live from the massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Hope everybody is doing well. We continue to move through April here in 2021. A little bit of cloud news of the week, a few sort of interesting announcements and some big money being spent. And let's jump right into the cloud news of the week. First one is NVIDIA announced that they are going to start creating ARM-based CPUs. So they are going to directly go after Intel CPU business, and what's something they call the Grace CPU will be ARM-based. So interesting to watch that. We went from almost felt like a decade of very little conversation about hardware to the 2021s have become very much about hardware. So from Intel's announcement of Pat Gelsinger coming back, their stock roaring up about 30% since that, and Intel just announced Ice Lake here the other day, so a big announcement on the x86 front, and now NVIDIA coming back. NVIDIA had already made an acquisition of ARM and now going after ARM-based CPUs. So the hardware wars are back. We may have thought software was going to eat the world, but it seems like hardware is going to be back in the headlines for the foreseeable future, so that'll be fun to watch. Second was Microsoft decided to open their wallets. They decided to acquire Nuance for $19.7 billion. Nuance, most famously known for their Dragon voice recognition transcription software, or sort of voice AI, as people like to call it. It's interesting to sort of put this in perspective. They paid about $7 billion for GitHub, so for access to all the developers of the world. They paid about $26 billion for LinkedIn to access to everybody's resume and what was going on, and they're spending about $20 billion, roughly $19.7 billion, to be able to kind of go after your voice. And it's interesting, they sort of initially, I guess, positioned this to the press and the media as a big thing for going after healthcare, so transcription market, but it feels like a technology that's pretty broad and wide in terms of where you may see it show up. So it's very possible you see it show up in automobiles, or you see it show up in smartphones. It could show up on your Teams meeting. It should show up, in an Excel spreadsheet for all we know. So big acquisition by Microsoft. And then finally, AWS continues to play around with the Elasticsearch community. They announced a couple of things. They are creating a project called OpenSearch, which is, as somebody, they've done this thing with Elasticsearch, as Elasticsearch has changed their licensing around that project to where you if you were using it as a cloud service, you had to give back everything that you did. So AWS came out and said, well, we're going to, kind of fork that, if you will. And now what we're seeing is them kind of taking over the original roots of the Elasticsearch project. So they're now sort of the owners of the Elasticsearch project, now called OpenSearch, with the sort of most open, liberal license, if you will. So interesting to sort of watch that back and forth continue to happen. But, it's just sort of part and parcel for the course. Search is a huge part of everyday life, part of a lot of our applications. And so AWS is very much trying to capture as much of that community as they possibly can. So interesting, again, to watch the back and forth in that space as well. So with that, we're going to wrap up Cloud News of the Week. Like I said, not tons and tons. Obviously we'll put more stuff in the show notes, but we're going to wrap up for that. In our show, this week, we're going to talk a little bit about something we haven't talked about in a long time, which is really kind of managing unstructured large amounts of files in the cloud, right? We haven't really talked about storage in a long, long time, because when we first got started, we used to talk about on-prem stuff quite a bit. It's been all about the cloud the last 4, 5, 6 years, and really hadn't talked about managing that. So we're going to talk about that right after the break. Today's show is sponsored by Datadog, a monitoring analytics platform for cloud scale infrastructure and applications. Datadog provides dashboarding, alerting, application performance monitoring, and log management in one tightly integrated platform, so you can get end-to-end visibility quickly. Be proactive with your monitoring strategy and catch issues before your clients are impacted. Start managing the overall health of your environment with a free Datadog trial. Go to datadog.com/cloudcast for the free trial. That's datadog.com/cloudcast.
Today's show is sponsored by Okta, the leading independent identity solution. Okta provides best-in-class authorization so your customers and workforce can safely access what they need most right when they need it from anywhere. Organizations around the world trust Okta's Identity Cloud to sign in, authorize, and manage users, whether it's employees, contractors, partners, or customers. And with Okta's developer tools, you'll never have to build authentication again. Our customizable code blocks are flexible and future-proof with easy-to-use APIs and SDKs, so you can do less coding and more shipping. Okta is dedicated to building the most reliable, neutral identity platform because it means protecting more than a login. Identity is protecting people, their ideas, their work, their brilliance. It's protecting your future with confidence. Learn more at okta.com. That's OKTA.com.
And we're back. And, Aaron, for a long time, you and I used to be somewhat associated or sort of adjacently associated with storage. And then, for a while, because we were doing so much stuff on-prem, we kind of didn't cover that too much. But today, you and I kick ideas around back and forth. A lot of times we're like, hey, the cloud changes stuff. And we probably should go back and look at some of the really kind of big trends that are happening in terms of how companies are managing data in the cloud and, kind of big things in the cloud as opposed to what we used to do years and years ago on-prem that had certain restrictions and so forth. So kind of excited to dive into today because, again, we haven't touched storage as much as we used to back in the day. So very excited to have Paige Hinckley with us, who is Senior Director of Global Alliances and Go-to-Market for cloud storage, cloud file management company Qumulo. Paige, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Brian. Super excited to be here today.
So first off, go ahead, Aaron.
Go ahead, Brian. I was going to jump in, but go ahead.
No,
you, man.
Yeah. So, Paige, before we jump into Qumulo and kind of the things that Qumulo brings to helping companies manage data at scale in the cloud, you've been at a lot of companies in the past who really were kind of, have changed the landscape. We've covered this space for 10 plus years, but you've been sort of front and center at that in multiple ways. Give folks a little bit of your background and kind of what's excited you now about this space as well.
Sure. Thanks so much. So I actually started my career in telecommunications in a startup, and I worked for the first wireless company to offer CDMA technology. It was called Primeco Personal Communications, and it later merged with Verizon Wireless. But it was really an exciting time when cell phones were becoming increasingly popular in the late 90s. And it was really fun to be a part of that early adoption. So that was a great company to be at the forefront of that technology. And then following Primeco, I went to work for Dell and started actually in advertising for the SMB market, where I launched Dell Power Connect switches, if you remember those. And I think the most exciting was really introducing the Dell Inspiron laptops. And so when people are moving away from traditional desktops, I was at the forefront of launching that mobile movement there. After that, I became a product manager and then went to work for HP, where I actually ran marketing for the Americas for their PC division. And then moved over to launch some integrations with mobile broadband and laptops with Qualcomm. And then that kind of got me into the alliances and partnerships, where I worked with large brands like the NBA, American Airlines, and some others. Then following that, moved over to VMware, where I managed Dell, the largest partner of VMware at the time. That was prior to the marriage of the two companies. And then I went to AWS, where I was one of the first people on their global partner marketing team, which is now over 300 people. But I was responsible for designing and executing their partner portal, APN Marketing Central, and then took the Partner Summit worldwide to about 20 cities around the world. So all of those experiences really led me to, love building and starting up new technologies. And that's what got me excited about Qumulo. So when I got that call, I thought, hey, I'm going to investigate this. This is really super exciting as they're moving from on-prem into the cloud. and really thought I could take some of my experiences being at the forefront of technology, moving it to the next kind of area. And so I'm here and excited to leverage some of the partnerships I've worked on throughout my career as well to help expand and grow this market.
And Paige, the one thing it's really interesting having been involved in a bunch of those industry transitions, and Brian and I have referred to it on the podcast many times as almost like waves, right? And one of the biggest bits of career advice we'll give folks is make sure you can ride those waves because you really learn so much in a short amount of time. And we've been part of the storage, we've been part of infrastructure, and it's really interesting, as Brian mentioned in the introduction, to see what is going on with storage because storage is so critical. So let's kind of start with this understanding of like how data has changed a little bit over the years, right? Because we are starting to move into applications using video or huge data lakes or analytics or just massive content repositories. It's kind of almost been cliche in the industry of data and the data explosion. But in your eyes, Paige, how has this scale evolved over the years?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just in my own personal life, streaming content, right? As we're all during the pandemic watching Netflix, you can think about how you're consuming all of that data for entertainment. And, in the past 2 years, the market for file in the cloud has jumped from 370 million in 2018 to 1.5 million in 2019. And it actually exceeded 1.2 billion in the first half of 2020. So huge growth here, and conservative estimates are actually putting cloud file market at about $8 billion by 2024. So just huge opportunity as we scale and see increased usage across several markets, including, as I mentioned, media and entertainment, healthcare and life sciences. We're seeing a huge bump there. Also financial institutions, if you think about the mortgage companies, and such. So for both on-prem and cloud file, the total addressable market is going to be about 18 billion by 2024. So, while we've seen IT spend go down during the pandemic, the need for unstructured file data has just expanded. And we think that, this accelerated growth due to digital transformation is just going to continue on this trend. And also with AI and IoT use cases evolving, we're going to see that increased trend continue.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, those numbers almost, sort of outpace just some of the general growth numbers for the cloud. And those numbers are, eye-popping as it is. I want to dive into Qumulo a little bit. Qumulo does some very unique things around scalability. And as I mentioned at the top, what you can do in the cloud is very different than what you could ever do on-prem. You spend a lot of your time focused on the cloud partners, so the AWSs and Azures and Google, and how you can do unique things in the cloud. What are some of those unique use cases that you find your customers are able to leverage sort of the scalability of Qumulo, the ability to make everything look like one giant file system? What are some of the kind of business side use cases you find that really take advantage of that?
Yeah, we've seen some very cool use cases across our customers. Just this year, a few examples include the capture of filmmakers' video, which they're using to then turn into blockbuster movies. So we've seen a huge explosion across our media and entertainment customers with a lot of studios and whatnot, also VFX. Financial institutions like mortgage companies that I mentioned prior. So think about, when you're going in to refinance your home, right? All of that information that you have to give over to the mortgage companies, well, they have to capture and store all of that massive amounts of personal data, and they need a secure place to store that. Also, universities and schools, as you think about the pandemic and all of the virtual classrooms that have been required to deliver education, not only locally, but on a global scale as they're collaborating across classrooms around the globe. Another cool use case we've seen is airplanes and drones. So drones have really taken off in the last probably 5 years. And some cool things that they're doing are taking images and then transforming those into maps for disaster responses. So leveraging all of that image capturing and then needing to transform and store those. Finally, we're seeing laboratories. So we actually just closed a deal with LabCorp with AWS, and we've also seen some other genetic research labs, looking at all of those genes to develop new drug therapies. So just tons of different use cases across industries. And, as we're working with these cloud providers, more and more continue to pop up. So lots of great use cases across the board. And we're super excited to see how we can help transform really the world as we continue to aid them in these areas they're working in.
Yeah, Paige, go ahead.
Erin, it's funny. She's explaining that. I feel like she just did a recap of 2020, right? Between everybody staying at home and watching movies, you've got massive
I was actually going to go
massive refinancing of real estate and all these sort of things that they all line up with this.
Yeah, completely. I was actually going to say exactly that. I felt like this was a complete capture of 2020 in a nutshell. And yeah, I mean, the larger trend there around the unstructured data, I mean, it's affecting all of us from our personal lives all the way to how we're doing our day jobs. And I mean, let's be honest, right? With COVID and a lot of us kind of working from home and working remotely and more dispersed workforce, it's actually becoming, this idea of data fragmentation, if you will, is becoming even greater at times. And so, Paige, as you work with companies moving file data to the cloud, what are some of tips and tricks and lessons that you've seen that lead to faster success? It's a question we always like to ask, where's the gotchas in all of this?
Yeah, as we're talking with customers, we're really looking at, what's in it for them and how is this going to help them be more successful. And the cool thing about moving their file storage to the cloud, it allows them to pay for storage they actually use and what they need, right? And so an area, of course, that companies are always looking for is how they can cut their costs. And, they can also cut their energy consumption by moving to the cloud up to 70%. There's been a huge trend in a green business, if you will, and this really helps get them there. So overall, they're, saving time and money on storage maintenance costs as well. So they're able to kind of offload some of that. And the pandemic actually forced many of these businesses, as you just mentioned, to move to a remote workforce, right? And so by moving their file data to the cloud, multiple locations were easily able to collaborate seamlessly, whereas before that wasn't really the case. And we saw this a lot with some of the studios we worked with. But really, the beauty of Qumulo for the customers is that we offer a hybrid approach. So if they're not fully ready to move to the cloud, we can still help maintain their data in the data center on-prem, and then also start to move them and migrate them to the cloud to begin their journey. So I think that's a really unique differentiator that Qumulo has versus some of our competition.
Yeah, no, that's great. One of the things with our audience, we're lucky in that, some of the listeners are kind of what we call kind of end user practitioners. So they're trying to sort out, hey, how does this new technology work? Which one should we pick? How fast do we move? But then we also get a lot of companies that are, what we would call sort of technology partners, right? So they're other people in the industry that are trying to learn about stuff. I feel like in the use cases that you've been walking through, you guys sort of live at this intersection between, end users trying to do things, right? Whether it's making a movie or, sort of backing up paperwork, but also, you've got to be able to work with a lot of technology companies because data management, backup, scaling it on the cloud is all those things. Give us a sense of how do partners work with Qumulo? Because it feels like there's a lot of opportunities, especially for things that are really sort of top of mind for people's business and even their day-to-day life these days.
Absolutely, Brian. So Qumulo does offer a multi-cloud approach. So we have our partnerships right with AWS, Google Cloud, and now we're offering an early customer program as we're introducing a new SaaS offering on Azure. So that's going to open up a whole nother area of our business. In addition, though, to our cloud partners, we have a large ecosystem of what we call technology partners. And really, we're focused on a few areas here. Backup and recovery, as you mentioned, with partners like Commvault, Veeam, Veritas, media and entertainment. We're really growing out that ecosystem. So we have partners there like Adobe, Foundry, and Teradici. But we're constantly looking for new partners also to add to this ecosystem that makes sense for our customers. So we really listen to our customers and what they're demanding. And honestly, what's already in their environment. And then we want to make sure that those companies are part of our ecosystem. But also healthcare and life sciences. We have some partnerships there with GE Healthcare, Change Healthcare, and then also a channel partner, ARM to Qumulo, which is some of the more traditional channel partners you would expect, like CDW, Insight, E+, and many more. But we're constantly reevaluating our partners, Brian, and adding to them. And so I would just encourage, if you're listening to this podcast today and interested in partnering with Qumulo, that you reach out, and we'd love to have a conversation because we just want to deliver the best solutions to our customers at the end of the day for these use cases that they're trying to solve for. And I would just add, one example of a solution across different partner types we're working on is right now we're working with AWS in the media and entertainment space with a couple of our tech partners as well to answer, some of the needs that they have. And we have a big solution announcement we'll have coming up here in the May timeframe. So stay tuned on that one.
Very cool. Very cool. A little bit of a teaser there, and we didn't really dive into a lot of the tech. There's some very good things on the Qumulo website. We'll put some links in the show notes for folks who are kind of wanting to dig into how the scalability works. How simple it is to get environments up and running. Aaron, you want to sort of take us, kind of wrap us up and take us home? I know we've dived into, I think, which has been fun, a lot of the use cases to think about. Sometimes we like we said, we sometimes take some things for granted because it's become so simple. But you want to wrap us up and take us home?
Yeah, absolutely. So Paige, thank you very much for your time today and your insights. On behalf of Brian and myself, again, as always, thank you to everyone listening out there. Please tell a friend. Please rate us on the various stores that are out there. And if you have a friend that is interested in learning about cloud computing, make sure you point them at our other podcast, Cloudcast Basics, as well. We've done a few seasons of that, and it's certainly great to for somebody that is new to the industry and wants to get up to speed as well. So with that, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.